My guest today is the mastermind behind the WASD20 YouTube channel.
Welcome to DiceGeeks.com Tabletop RPG Show. Level up your RPG campaigns by filling yourself with stories and knowledge. Explore topics from archaeology to film history to writing to literature and much, much more. This is DiceGeeks.com Tabletop RPG Show.
Hey guys, welcome to the show. My name is Matt and I am your host. This is the show where we learn how to become better game masters and better role players by filling ourselves with stories and knowledge. You might have seen some of my books around the interwebs. I am the author of the Book of Random Tables book series. I create resource books to help game masters cut down their prep time and have more fun at the table. You can check those out at dicegeeks.com, drivethrurpg.com, or amazon.com. You can search for the Book of Random Tables. You can also just search for Dice Geeks, all one word, and you will find all of my stuff. It is my mission to make sure that game masters keep their sanity, okay? I mean, seriously, guys. I've almost lost it a few times in my life, okay? I'm getting real now, all right? And I don't want anybody to go through that, okay? I want people to run good games. I want players to have fun at the table. I want game masters to have fun too. That is my goal. You can check out my books. They help game masters cut down their prep time, all right? Because nobody has time to prep that stuff anymore. I mean, there's too much cool stuff on Netflix, Amazon Prime, Disney Plus. The Picard show is out now. I mean, are you serious? Cut down that GM prep time so you can watch Picard. That's what I'm telling you, okay? That's what I'm telling you right now, all right? So you can go home and you can tell your gaming group that some random guy on the internet said it was okay for you to cut down your Game Master prep time so you could watch Star Trek Picard, okay? All right, you with me? Okay, cool. I have a great interview for you today. Let's jump right in. My guest today is the YouTuber, streamer, and artist behind WASD20, Nate Vanderzee. Nate, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks so much, Matt. It's great to be here.
I like to start off the show by asking people just how they got introduced to tabletop RPGs.
Yeah, so for me, I'm a fairly recent, I guess it still feels recent. I'm 38, and I think I was probably 33 or 32 at the time I found tabletop RPGs. So it's been a little over 5 years. I was kind of in a lot of spaces around tabletop RPGs growing up, but somehow never quite took the plunge. So for example, I've always loved fantasy. I read The Hobbit in 7th grade and I've been hooked ever since, or maybe 6th grade. I don't remember. Anyway. And I actually we would go to the bookstore, me and my buddy, and we would buy like old used at the used bookstore D&D novels of various sorts, of varying degrees of quality. And but no, I loved them. And I remember even going to I grew up in Seattle, and we had a Wizards of the Coast store in Seattle.
Oh wow.
This is before they owned D&D, but I remember going in there and just like marveling at all this stuff. They had all kinds of stuff in there, including miniatures, which we would, get and all that stuff. We had Hero Quest as kids. So the board game, which, so anyway, there's all this stuff that was like, I mean, we were around it. I remember even, with my friend when the game, Warcraft 2 came out, I think there was a trailer for Diablo on it, like a teaser, like, ooh, coming soon from Blizzard. And I remember we were so into that. We would watch it over and over again. And we actually made characters for Diablo before we had ever seen the game. I don't know what they had, but yeah, like a gear list and like, probably some stats. I don't know. So anyway, it's a wonder I didn't find it sooner. But yeah, I finally was inspired to take the plunge at the age of 32. I had read Ready Player One, which talked about D&D. A year before that, I had read Masters of Doom, which is about the guys from id Software, and they had an ongoing D&D campaign, and it just sounded crazy. It sounded absolutely nuts. So after reading those two books, I was like, I think I got to try this. And I reached out to some local Facebook group or something like that, and someone said, oh yeah, there's, check meetup.com. And I went on meetup.com and I found some guys playing at game stores, Pathfinder Society and some other stuff, and it was on. That's a long answer. Sorry.
No, that's fine. That's fine. So was D&D the first tabletop then you played, or did you play Pathfinder first?
I played Pathfinder first. Yep.
Okay.
Pathfinder RPG. Then I played 13th Age. What else did I play? I would play anything. I wanted to try a bunch. And then 5th edition came out, and I liked that a lot. So I pretty much stuck with that, but I'm still always trying other things. I try to branch out a few times a year, try new games. I'm always getting new books. So
yeah. Who isn't?
Yep. It's an addiction.
yeah, absolutely. Well, I always find it interesting to learn about people who played the first time as an adult, because I played the first time when I was 9 years old, and I just kind of grew up with role-playing games, and I just find it interesting when I learned people started playing as an adult. But,
it kind of makes me wonder, like, what if I had played when I was that age? Who knows? Like, maybe I wouldn't be into it anymore. That's very possible, right?
Yeah,
that's a lot of people. So
some people take a big break. Then they just decide to take a break and kind of play out some things and stuff. Yeah.
Right. So who knows?
And then,
but have you stayed into it steadily since age 9?
Pretty much. I did have a break for a while I was in college, just because when I went to college, mainly in kind of the late 90s, and that it just wasn't very popular. And so I just couldn't find, really find a lot of people who were willing to play. And I was concerned about keeping my grades up, even though I would still every once in a while pull out some books and make maybe a Heroes Unlimited character or or something like that, or a Star Trek character or something like that every once in a while. Just on my own. But then pretty much, right after college, I kept playing. And then there was a lull here and there, but then, I've been playing pretty steadily. Had been out of D&D for a while, just because, frankly, the rules had gotten so complex, and it was hard to introduce new players to the game. And so I used Star Wars, the West End Star Wars game, to really introduce a lot of my friends into role playing. And so I would GM a lot of Star Wars for them, because it was a pretty easy sell, because they knew Star Wars, loved Star Wars. And then I just said, hey, this is a simple rule system, and you want to be Han Solo? And they were like, yeah, I do.
Yep, absolutely.
And then, of course, when 5th edition came out, just started Dungeons and Dragons again, and have been playing pretty regularly ever since then. So.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, some people, play when their kids take a break. Some people take a break, come back, and some of us are addicted to the whole thing.
Yep.
But I can't even really imagine my childhood without playing Dungeons and Dragons or Fast Star Trek or West End Star Wars. I just can't even imagine what I would have done with all that time. Maybe heroin or something. I don't know what I would have done.
Yeah, who knows?
Yeah. You were introduced then, you started playing as an adult. What made you go to YouTube and start creating content on YouTube?
Yeah, so, I had talked with a friend. I had reconnected with a childhood friend, and we started playing video games a lot. And we'd play online, like almost every night. We'd be playing like Battlefield 3 or something. And he just was super into the internet, and I was kind of out of it for a number of years, just didn't really spend that much time online. And so he had this idea of starting YouTube, and we wondered if we could do it together and stuff. But he was in Seattle area, and I'm in Michigan now, so it was just one of those things. But we kind of talked about it for a while, and we both started YouTube channels right around the same time. And for me, it was just kind of like, we've been talking about doing this for a while. I think I want to do like a gaming channel. I think I'd made like Dark Souls video or something like that. And then I decided, I'm going to do this. I'm getting into tabletop RPGs. I'm just like, I want to dive deep into this. I knew right away, like, I want to dive deep on this. Like, this sounds amazing. I know I'm in. And so right off the bat, I just started the channel as a way to kind of document my journey into tabletop RPGs. I was totally new. and I knew almost nothing about like tabletop RPGs. And I wanted to document that. So if you go back to my early videos, it's kind of cool. You can see that, like, that just, deer in the headlights, Nate, is like opening the Pathfinder beginner box, like, this is cool. And I also did PC gaming, and that's how the channel name came about, WASD20, combining the two worlds. But the PC games, like those videos went nowhere, and I didn't really have a community. Whereas, like, I found a Facebook group called the Tabletop RPG Brigade, and everyone's making videos, and they're about tabletop RPGs. And that's where I met the Provokers guys and stuff. And so we were all, I mean, at the time it was just like a way for them to talk to each other kind of and discuss topics via videos. But for me, it was pretty right away. I was like, well, I would like to make videos for a wider audience and help people like me. So that's kind of how it got started.
Yeah, that's awesome. And now you mentioned the Provokers. That's actually how I learned about you, was through the Provokers. Could you just maybe kind of explain the Provokers a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So it's just me and some of my best friends playing D&D semi-regularly, not so regularly anymore. But I mean, for a while there, we were just playing once a month, and it started as a one-shot. Matt Click from A Fistful of Dice, invited some fellow guys from the brigade who seemed cool, who he hadn't gamed with before, and said, hey, you guys want to play one shot of D&D 5e? It just came out and stuff. And we're like, yeah, sure, let's try it. And then we had a great time, and we just kept going. So yeah.
And I've actually interviewed Matt Click here on the podcast, so I'll put a link to his interview in the show notes to this episode at dicegeeks.com.
Yeah, great guy.
Yeah.
He was now, and it's weird how D&D just brings people together. RPGs will do that. It's like, I didn't know these guys from Adam, and now they're like my best friends. We talk every day.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, and I was thinking about that earlier today. That still one of my best friends, we met in like a study hall in probably 8th grade. I just walked in the room, had no idea who really anybody was, and he's sitting there like looking at a Ravenloft book. And I just went up to him and I was like, do you play D&D? And he was like, yes. And we've just been friends now for like 30 years, 35 years. I don't even know.
I love that. Yeah. Like my best friend, Will, who I've referenced several times, this childhood friend that we were best buds. Then we kind of fell out of touch and reconnected recently. It was a Spider-Man comic slipped into the cover of his, the clear cover notebooks. He's like, dude, I have that same comic. And it was just like, boom, it's on. Best buds.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It is really cool how like just interests like that can just bring people together.
Yep.
Yeah. So yeah, I definitely have a lot of stories about good friends playing D&D, playing other role-playing games. It's really cool. But yeah, so to kind of get back to the Provokers, I listened to the Provokers, and I really enjoyed the campaign and the storytelling, and I just thought it was I don't know, that was kind of at a time too, because I was listening to it kind of a number of years ago when it kind of just a little bit after it first started, and I was still kind of blown away by the amount of content on the internet of just D&D content, people playing, and just kind of blown away by the idea that people would actually listen to other people play and watch other people play. And then of course that's kind of exploded in the last like 3 or 4 years or so. It's been huge. And it's I mean, Matt was doing it before it was cool, for sure. And he had like other groups before the Provokers too, that it was really a lot of fun. Just like, it was a pretty small community that, we'd have like 50 to 100 viewers depending, but that felt big. And it was just like, people were really enthusiastic and really enjoyed it. And it became a really cool community, not just the 5 of us playing, but a lot of other people jumping on board and enjoying it with us. Yeah. like I said, I enjoyed listening to some of the episodes and that as well, and I kind of followed all the way through into Bleak Wrath, but yes, haven't seen an episode recently.
No, neither have I.
Yeah.
I hope we get back to that someday.
Yeah,
I'm sure we will, but yeah.
And I guess it's still we're still so new in kind of the whole streaming aspect of things. But I think the last time I checked in on Critical Role, I think it was 60,000 people watching them live on a Thursday night, and I was just
Crazy.
like, I know, it's just unbelievable.
Yeah. Yep, it's quite a thing. I mean, in their Kickstarter last year, like, wow.
Oh yeah.
I mean, we're getting I backed it, and I'm gonna see a D&D game brought to life in a cartoon. Dang it, that's awesome.
Yeah, with was it the largest Kickstarter ever? I think so. I mean, it was ridiculous.
Close anyway.
Yeah, it was just unbelievable. Yeah, just absolutely unbelievable. Yeah. So D&D has really gone mainstream.
Yeah.
Kind of just wondering, since you started playing, have you run games more, or do you play more?
I would say it's pretty even, but I probably end up running games more.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I was just wondering, I do ask a lot of the people who run games. What would you tell to somebody who has, maybe they've played once or twice, or they've heard about Dungeons and Dragons on Critical Role or on the many TV shows that now talk about it? What would you tell them if they were going to sit down and try to run their first game? What is just a couple keys that you would think they would need to know?
Oh, so I think knowing your group is really important, and just kind of knowing what they like. A lot of times a new DM is playing with newer players too, and just want to find out, what are they into, and go to those things. Yeah, which can sometimes be tricky. Like, expectations are not always like, I have a friend who is just like, it was interesting. One of the things I just noticed, like, he was always wanting to upgrade his gear and stuff. It's like, well, in 5e, like, maybe at level 5 you'll find a magic sword, or I think I probably give out magic items more than that. But anyway, and it's like, well, he's used to playing like Diablo. It's like, you find a new weapon every 5 minutes, right? And you're like, whoa, cool. This one shoots acid. And it's like, so anyway, knowing your players and kind of setting those expectations of like kind of how the game will go, and just being flexible with that, and being honest about your failures, and being able to say like, I don't know, but let's do it this way. Yeah, I think you kind of have to let go of your pride, definitely, because the reality is you'll look back on the first time and you're just gonna be like, oh man, that was not great. Probably. I don't know. That's how it is for most of us, I think. And so yeah, just being willing to say, I don't know, but let's just do it this way, and then you can look it up later. That's a big thing. And also, I think depending on your system, like, try to figure out what is really essential to know. So in D&D, I mean, you could argue nothing is essential. You can totally wing it, but I would say like knowing what the skills and abilities are, so that you can just say like, well, I don't know, but let's roll this thing. And that can really help.
I always find it interesting too, though, when I hear, some people who will say that they're kind of worried about, being the dungeon master, or they're worried about running a game. Because the first time I ran a game was the day after I played for the first time, and I ran my mom through a dungeon. And of course I was 9. Like, I just didn't even think about it, and so, people will kind of ask me different things, and I'm just like, well, just do it. Why are you afraid? What would there be afraid about? Because I started with, kind of like no self-consciousness at all. And I'm sure, a lot of the games I ran when I was a kid were terrible, but it was a good training ground because my friends didn't care too much.
Yeah.
Or if they did, we just talked about it a little bit, and then I changed what I was doing.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. I mean, it's, that's you were thrown right in there, man. Good for you.
Yeah. I think it can be a little, I guess it's tricky. You know, I still play with some friends, but I guess it can be tricky if you're playing with strangers for the first time online or something like that.
Yeah. And the other thing that I would say too, that just came to me is like, when you're running your mom through a dungeon, like that's kind of like a good, running someone through a dungeon is actually like a good way to go as your first time. Just like keep it simple, you know, don't try to get too fancy. For me, like I tried to get really fancy with all these like narrative techniques and stuff. And it was just like, man, it backfired on me. And I realized I needed to be more explicit and just like really say like, okay, here's the quest. And like, that's okay. You can, it's like when you're first learning, like just like you can be tropey and traditional and say like, you're in a tavern and here's the quest, or you're all on your way to the dungeon. You find yourself at the mouth of a cave, you know, like that's okay. Like when you're first starting, like, you know, just have fun with it and don't be afraid.
No, I think that's fantastic advice. And I think sometimes even when I'm giving advice, I'll miss that point, because if you're just starting out for the first time, and if you have, especially too, if you have new players, you know, players who haven't played or played once or twice, and you've played once or twice and now you're running your first game, that if you just say, okay, you're at the entrance of a dungeon, you know, and there's a corridor in front of you and it looks like it might turn up ahead. What do you do? You know, I think that is, that is this great practice to get in, you know, to start kind of just developing. And then also just to, dungeons are great. I mean, dungeons are fun. And so the players are probably just going to have a blast, even if you mess up some stuff. And it's really hard to mess up a dungeon, right? Because it's you just have certain rooms, they have certain items, they have certain encounters, and you can kind of just roll with it and learn how to play. And then too, you know, I tell some people too, it's just never underestimate even just, you know, especially if you're new players and new to GMing, never underestimate just having people in a tavern or an inn and just have a bar fight.
Yes.
Because it will teach you how the rules work. You will use different skills and you will start to just see how things flow, and you'll start to see players who want to talk, people who want to fight, and you'll just get an idea for kind of everything, the whole game and your gaming group.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. I agree. Lean into those tropes and just enjoy them. Some of my first sessions that I remember like going poorly, I ran a game online once that was it had like a chase sequence, and I think I had read the rules on chases, but like it was just like, man, we're just like, how far away is he now? And it was all theater of the mind. It was just like, it was just a mess of like, well, he's about 50 feet away now, and it's just like, what is happening now? We're like chasing over miles in initiative order. And the other one was running a game for my friend and my brother online privately. And it was just like, it was a little too sandboxy, and it's like they just started doing all this stuff around town. And I'm like, no, go on the quest, like you know. And it's just like, oh man, what am I doing? They find a key on this guard, and then like they want to know what the key does, and I was like, I don't know, I just put this key on this guard. Of course he has keys. Like, you know, it's just like, oh, what am I doing?
Yeah.
So it's all good.
Yeah. And then I think there are two, you know, I talk about it in some of the books and stuff that I write. Kind of after my first attempts, and I became a little bit more serious and I learned some things, then I would plan out things, and then I would just cram the players through them. And if they deviated, I would be very angry at them. And so in my later years, and that I've given all that up, and basically I just don't even prep too much anymore. It's just basically thinking in the shower or driving or, you know, watching a movie or reading a book, and then I will take some of those ideas and just throw them. And so if they find a key on the guard, I have no idea what it does, I just made it up. Then we'll just roll with it, and I'll just say, well, you know, you can start looking, there's some locks down the hallway. Sure. And they just kind of can just run with it from there. But I think I do think that probably comes from experience, just running so many games. And
I think some people will be good at it right away.
Yeah.
But I was not. So I think you're totally right. If my prep notes exceed 1 page, like that's a problem.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
For me, like that is too much because then I will want to railroad them to these things, and it's like it's not flexible.
And I think too there's opportunities sometimes where you allow your players freedom, but once if they make a decision like, okay, we're going to go to this the lost mine that's in the mountains, and it seems like and you as the game master have been wanting them to go there, and you have this planned out, well, just say they're there. Just say you travel and describe a arduous journey and have them be there.
There you go.
Because players always get distracted. If they find a random encounter where goblins attacked a wagon, they're gonna search that wagon and try to find out if there's any orphans from the wagon. I mean, they're just gonna do whatever.
Yeah, and where do the goblins live? And
exactly.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's just so many ways that that people can do things. And but I was thinking too. I kind of always ask a lot of my guests some tips about running games. But what about playing? What advice would you give to somebody who's just sitting down to play?
I think the main thing that I think can just avoid a lot of headaches is just realizing that trying to contribute to everyone's fun. I work with high schoolers, and I teach, and it's a lot of that learning experience. I think of like, this is not your opportunity to play out your dream character alone. Like, this is a group experience, and is that character really going to work well with the group? And and I think if it's not, like, well, is there a way you can play him that will? Because there probably is, right? You can play the character in a way that it'll the game will go okay. And just that idea of kind of like just helping contribute to everyone's fun. And just thinking about that's not just the DM's job. It's everyone's job, contribute to the fun and be a good teammate kind of thing, which isn't to say you can't have some inter-party conflict and stuff. That can be fun too. But, I think balance.
Yeah. I always tell people to be an active player, to like look for things in the game that you can act upon. And what is look for things, what would drive the story forward, what would create a cool moment. Just look for those and make decisions kind of along those lines. Have you found that's good as well?
Oh, definitely. Like, you mentioned driving the story forward. I think that your DM will so much appreciate that. If you're, which isn't to say you can't, foil the DM's plans sometimes. I think that can be, I appreciate it when my players do that too, because that's also being an active player, right? Yeah. Latching on to something you didn't expect and like, okay, that is kind of interesting. You're right. let's explore that, But I think absolutely just being an active player. It can be challenging for some people who aren't very outgoing, but you don't need to be super outgoing and do voices and all this stuff. Just having your character, act and asking good questions of the DM in character and out of character. All that stuff can really contribute to a great time.
Yeah. And the asking questions, and then too, I always tell the game masters, it's just like, expect a lot of questions, because if you get into kind of this mindset where you're not expecting questions, you can start getting frustrated with your players. But always expect your players to ask you a lot of questions. And also, I find some of the best players are the ones who bring bags of Doritos to the session.
That is also true. Bring snacks. Yep. For me, I run games at my house usually, and I have invested a lot of time and money, and for someone to bring snacks it's a small token of appreciation. And get your DM gifts for Christmas. It can be like a $5 miniature that you're like, here, Merry Christmas. All that stuff is just like, oh, see, I'm appreciated.
Yeah. Now, do you play with miniatures or mainly theater of the mind?
I mainly play with miniatures when I'm running games at home. But I'll run games online sometimes and and then I usually don't. Just do theater of the mind often, but definitely a mix. I'm flexible. I have crafted some 3D terrain. I've got about 24 battle mats of various kinds and all kinds of people send me stuff, so that's nice.
Oh, well, there you go.
Yeah.
Now, on your channel as well, you draw fantasy maps.
Yes. Yep. Yeah. That's something I definitely enjoy, and it's one of the things my channel is known for.
Mm-hmm. Now, did you just start drawing those recently, or have you been drawing maps for a long time?
So I pretty much started recently. Like, this is not something I did a lot as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I doodle all the time, so I'm sure if you go back in my doodles, we can find a map somewhere probably, but not that I remember anyway. I remember drawing lots of Corvettes when I was in 4th grade. I remember drawing Wolverine and Spawn when I was in 8th grade.
Oh, there you go.
I do not remember maps. So yeah, no, that's something that I was actually inspired by the YouTube channel Questing Beast. Ben over at Questing Beast has been doing it longer than I have. And I just thought, man, I love these videos. These are cool. And I was like, I'm going to try drawing a map. This guy's inspiring me. So I turned on my webcam and I drew a map and people really liked it. So I kept going, and that's that. That was about 4 years ago.
Okay. So what do you think about when you're drawing a map? Are these continents, like islands, or? Yeah,
I mean, I absolutely just think of all the D&D games I've played, all the fantasy books I've read. I mean, I definitely think of like Middle Earth and Forgotten Realms are prominent in my mind when I'm drawing maps. And I try to I think those are things that inspire me.
Mm-hmm.
Because they've been with me since I was in middle school, really. And those worlds, so I'm inspired to wonder what's under that nook, in that nook or cranny, or under that rock. And I just, I love it. It's just a way for me to let my imagination fly. So, yep.
Yeah. And I think Tolkien said in his, I forget, in one of his essays, he said to tell a fantasy story, maybe it was on fairy stories, but he said to tell a fantasy story, you draw a map, and then you let that map, the locations and the places and the features of the land on that map, tell the story.
Yeah. No, that's great. I'm going to have to find that quote.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, I think it might be on fairy stories, but
I love that essay, and I've read it before, but okay.
I can't remember. It might be in another essay, but
it's so good.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
So much wisdom there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so I just I end up drawing a lot of other people's maps these days, but I'm taking a hiatus from map commissions. I'm working on like 2 more. And I've been closed for commissions for almost a year now, really. But just, still plugging away on ones I had committed to. And because I do want to just kind of let my mind, I can explore other people's worlds too, and that's fun. And I imagine, and I give my own twist and imagine my own things there. But I think, I just feel like I am wanting to spend more time on videos and really committing. It's more social. Doing maps for a client is a very solitary experience for me. That can be not as good. Whereas I love the rush of cranking out a video, staying up till 4 a.m., cranking out a video, and then just enjoying the interaction and seeing people enjoy it. You know what I mean? Whereas when I'm doing a map, I deliver it to the client, and they're very appreciative usually, and that's great. And I can, often I post it to Twitter or Instagram or whatever, and people think, cool, but it's just not quite the same because I've been working on that thing for 25 hours to get that.
Are there any features like that you really enjoy drawing, like mountains or the coastline or anything like that?
I'm a mountain man.
Okay.
We'll just say that. Yep. I like mountains.
Okay.
I grew up in Washington State, and I don't know where my friend found this quote. Maybe it's it sounds like it'd be something from like a Johnny Cash song or something like that. But when we'd be driving back out to Michigan to go to college, he'd always say, man, there's nothing worse than mountains in your rearview mirror. It was just like, man, those mountains just call to me. And here in Michigan, we don't really have too many mountains. So when I go back, when I would be driving down I-5 in Seattle, catching sight of Mount Rainier, just take my breath away every single day. I see that thing. So mountains. Awesome. Yeah. And they're fun to draw.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Now, I was kind of poking around your website, and I happened to notice, did you actually teach like an official class on the history of role-playing games?
Yes, I kind of did. Now, first of all, be careful when you're poking around my websites, because there are things that are broken.
Yeah.
Like my Sellsword Maps website, which has had my portfolio down for like 5 months now. And
I was going to tell you about that.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Many people have. And it's just like, yeah, it's one of those things that'll take me like 2 hours to figure out. And since I'm not doing commissions right now, it's just like, I'll get to that someday. Yeah. But anyway, yes, I did. So at the school where I teach, we have a program called Winterim. It's a high school. Winterim is a 2-week January term. When I went to college, we had 3-week J terms, and a lot of colleges do that. And this is 2 weeks. Students generally take one class in the morning, one class in the afternoon. So other students will do internships. There are also trips that go on. A couple of years ago, I got to lead a trip to Europe. That was amazing. But France, Germany, Belgium. I know Europe is a big place. We didn't go everywhere, but France, Germany, Belgium, mostly focused on World War II, which was incredible. So anyway, I'm a huge fan of our Winterim program. It's also afforded me the opportunity to teach a class called Video Games, History and Critical Thinking. Wow. And more recently, I have taught So You Want to Slay a Dragon, which is a class all about tabletop RPGs. Taught that, I think, 3 or 4 times now. And it's a half-day class. And it does have a focus where each day I do a little history lesson, starting with the beginning of time all the way up to, that first lesson takes us from the beginning of time all the way up to 1974 probably or something. I don't know. And then, so I'll do a little history lesson each day on the history, mostly of D&D, because that's, there are more books available on that. And
sure.
Yeah. The other part is then we play, and I encourage them to try new systems. They also have done presentations on various systems. We do like a couple of games a day where it's like, today we're going to have our Numenera and Fate group present, and they'll, do a little research and tell us about that game system, who created it, etc. So anyway, we do all kinds of stuff. We do world building exercises. Yeah, we do some interviews with some people, and via Skype usually, and it's a lot of fun.
Wow. Well, I'm just like really wishing that was around when I was in high school.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. That's amazing. So like looking into the history of role-playing games, is there something that was just really surprising that like you found out that you just didn't know about?
I didn't know anything when I started reading Of Dice and Men was the first one I read, which is a great book by John Ewalt. But yeah, it's all about the stories. There's Gary Gygax and Dave Arneson, their story, their relationship, the falling out. Pat Kilbane has a documentary he's working on. I backed it on Kickstarter. Sounds amazing. It's called The Dreams in Gary's Basement or something like that. I can't remember. Sorry, Pat. But you should interview him, by the way. He'd be amazing.
Well, yeah, I'll look him up.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
So anyway, and he describes it as, the story of Gary Gygax is the hero's journey. It is. It is. There's so many parallels, and we could say all stories are in some ways, but yeah, it's just there's the ups and the downs, and it's really interesting to me for anything I get really into. I want to know where it came from. This is true of video games too. I have this huge old book on the history of video games, and I love that stuff. And so whatever I'm into, I'm a history teacher, so I want to know the history.
You want to know the history. I guess since, you've mentioned video games a number of times, just kind of comparing tabletops and video games. What do you, what do you think makes the experience a little bit different for tabletop?
Yeah, it's just, it's the creativity in so many ways, right? The drawing of maps, the storytelling, the improv, the acting, the painting of miniatures, the crafting of terrain. There's just so much creativity going on there, and that's what's really drawn me to it. I've always felt like I'm creative, but I never created that much. I drew like crazy when I was a kid, and I wanted to be a comic book artist and all this, but I kind of got out of that. I guess teaching is fairly creative, so sometimes I do get creative burnout where it's like, man, I can't even think about running a game, planning a session right now. It's just like, let's just open a module and pull something out, which is why I'm thankful, people like you who write books. Yeah, but it's the creativity. So for me, video games, I still play, but I don't find myself actually playing very many RPGs, playing very many story-heavy games. Whereas before I found tabletop RPGs, I played almost exclusively single-player story-heavy games. And now that I play D&D and other RPGs, I find myself playing Rocket League, Overwatch, these kind of quick arcadey experiences that are over in 10 minutes, and it's like, whew, that was a rush. Not much story. Multiplayer, so I can play with friends and stuff. So it's interesting. I feel like I get my story fix and my like really delving into a world from tabletop RPGs, and so I don't really find myself going to video games for those experiences that much anymore.
I just always think there is just no substitute for playing against like another human mind.
Yeah.
That the NPCs say something different every time. In Skyrim, they say the same thing every time. Yep. And I think there are maybe now people are discovering D&D more since it's kind of resurging in popularity. But I think there are a lot of people who are out there playing video games who would lose their minds if they played a game of Dungeons and Dragons and realize how they can be involved in the storytelling process. Yes.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah.
I think the analog experience of a tabletop RPG, we're in front of screens all the time.
Yeah.
So sitting down at a table, I mean, not that you can't play in front of a screen either. Like that's great, you're interacting. But even so, it's a different experience, and just the relationships. I mean, because of technology. Like I find myself to be kind of a homebody, and I love an ideal Friday night for me would be like, man, have a cup of tea and play some video games on the couch with the fireplace on, like, or a board game. I like those too. But like, the point is I don't need to get out that much. And tabletop RPGs, I think, are something that are getting people out of their own space and getting them, people are making friends, making connections. And I am a firm believer that it's saving lives from depression and anxiety and other mental health problems, that tabletop RPGs are a solution. They're not panacea, but yeah, it's a powerful experience that can really change lives.
Pulls people into a group of friends that maybe sometimes people wouldn't have many friends, but it pulls them into a group and gives them a shared experience, a shared story. It just gives them a lot more than you might think a game would give somebody.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Well, Nate, it has been a pleasure having you on the show. Where can people find out more about you and check out some of your videos?
Yeah, so youtube.com/WASD20 on YouTube. And, from there, you can pretty much find my other things. There are links to Twitter and all that other stuff at the top there. So, yeah, but that's the main place that I am active, but I'm on all the other things too. Just search for WASD20.
All right. Well, Nate, thanks again for being on the show today.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for having me, Matt. It was a lot of fun.
All right, there you have it, guys. I really hope you enjoyed this conversation with Nate today. As I mentioned, I have linked up his YouTube channel and his videos in the show notes for this episode at dicegeeks.com. Be sure to head over there and check those out and support Nate's work in the RPG community. Now, guys, if you want some free stuff, head over to dicegeeks.com/free. You will get 10 free dungeon maps, plus some other resources and you'll never miss an episode of this show. If you enjoy these interviews that I do each and every Wednesday, please consider supporting the show on Patreon. That would mean the world to me. You can head over to Patreon/DiceGeeks and check out all the support levels and goals there. Some really exciting stuff that is coming down the pipe just for you guys. Now, if you can't support the show financially, I totally get that. In that case, you can leave an honest review in your podcatcher of choice. You can tell your friends about the podcast, and you can also subscribe to the show. All of those things help the show, and I would greatly appreciate it. I thank you so much for listening this week, and until next time, keep gaming.